Hello and welcome to the Narrative Pro Quick Start Guide. Narrative Pro is a multi-platform, all-in-one game framework. So what that means is it gives you inventory, quests, dialogue, melee and firearm combat. It gives you NPCs, a full save system, skill trees, settings, all of the UI you need, and it's all pre-configured and ready to go, which will save you months or even years of development time. This quick start guide is basically a tutorial that you can follow along with, and together we'll go through the demo level, which is included with the plugin and shows off most of the features, and then we'll actually start making our own features. We'll add NPCs, dialogues, quests, we'll add our own weapons, we'll create a readable book, we'll create a gameplay cinematic, and finally we will add some art in to actually make it a bit more beautiful. At the end of this tutorial, you should have a really good general understanding of all the tools included with the plugin. So let's get started. If you don't want to have to follow this entire tutorial, we do have a pre-made project in the description, which includes a Metahuman setup. It includes a dialogue with facial animation, as you can see here.
Hello there. As you can see, implementing facial animations is very easy.
And the download link for this will be in the description. You just need to make sure you have Narrative Pro installed to Unreal Engine 5.4.
Well, how do you implement facial animations? It's very simple. Narrative will play any...
In order to follow along with this tutorial, you will need to purchase and install Narrative Pro, and the link to grab that will be in the description. Once you've purchased Narrative Pro in the Epic Games launcher, you'll just need to search for Narrative Pro Complete Game Framework and click on Install to Engine. And I'm using 5.4 today, so I'm going to select that one and click on Install. In today's video, I'm using Unreal Engine 5.4, so I would recommend using that version or later, but technically you can go with any version you like. And we're not going to be writing any C++ code today, but I will make this a C++ project. And we're going to call this Narrative Tutorial, and make sure you select blank project and then go ahead and create the project. Okay, so we're here inside of the Narrative Tutorial project, and you want to make sure that you have Narrative Pro installed to Unreal Engine 5.4. One other thing that I'd recommend is in your Narrative Tutorial, make a plugins folder and then put Narrative Pro in there, and that way you have a stable copy of the plugin and it won't get automatically updated by Epic Games, which is a really big deal because that can actually break your entire project. If the plugin gets updated, you're going to have to, modify it to work, and you really don't want to have to do that. So I've opened my project up that I've made, and if we go to plugins, you can see under the narrative thing here, I've got narrative enabled. And you should know it's enabled because in the content browser, if you right click, you can see we've got a narrative option here. Now, the great thing about narrative is that it's sort of pre-configured and ready to go more or less. There's a little bit of setup, but actually if you go to the Narrative Pro content folder, if you don't see that, by the way, just go to settings and go to show plugin content. So in here, if you search for demo map, you can actually open the demo map that comes with Narrative Pro up, and it's basically already set up and ready to go. You'll see that here in the demo level, if I hit play, I can more or less start running around. If you press tab, you can see I can open the inventory up, but not everything is going to display correctly. If you go into the settings menu, that's not really going to quite work properly. So there's a little bit of setup that we actually have to do first. Now the setup is a little bit boring, but it's pretty quick and painless. You only have to do it once, so we're going to just smash this out here. We'll go to Edit, Project Settings, and we're going to add some project settings that unfortunately you have to add because the plugin can't add it itself. So we're going to add a new trace channel, call it Narrative Interaction, and you want it to default to ignore and accept. And then one more for the weapons that come with Narrative Pro, Narrative Weapon. And this one needs to default to block. There are a couple of surface types that you are going to want to add. So if you go to all settings and search for surface, we just have character and concrete. And just make sure these are the first ones. And then if you need to add any later on, you can add them in the later surface types. The settings menu that comes with narrative requires that we use the narrative game user settings. So just search for that change it to game user settings. Next up, the asset manager, change that to the narrative one. Same for the game instance. For the game viewport, change that to the common game viewport. And we're going to set up common UI, which is something that Narrative uses for its UI. It's a really amazing system made by Epic Games. You just want to go to common input settings here. Select narrative input data. Under platform input, because I'm using Windows, I'm going to go down here. Change the gamepad name to generic. And then add some controller data. So you want the PC keyboard if you're using, well, I guess you'd be on PC. But if you're using an Xbox gamepad, add that as well. And if you were on Linux, say, you would add it to the Linux section instead. We're almost done here. The next thing we're going to do is go to the audio section, and by default it uses this master sound class that is in Unreal Engine itself. You just want to go down to the second one that's in Narrative Pro. I'm going to change both of these. For the sound mix, we're going to set it to the narrative sound mix. And inside of maps and modes, what we're going to do is we're going to open to the demo map. When we open our project, we'll open that one by default. And the game default map, when you open the game, we want it to open into the main menu. So if you just search for main menu, you can select that. Okay, we're almost done here. So one thing that's a little bit annoying is if you go into Narrative Pro Content, Abilities, drag the Cues folder and drop it into the Content folder and move it. The reason you need to do this is because Gameplay Ability System, which is one of the systems that Narrative Pro uses, needs your cues to be in the Content folder. They can't be in a plugin folder, so you just have to move them in here. And they also require that you add the gameplay tags manually, which is not very hard to do. It's just a little bit annoying. So inside of Weapon Impact here, you can see the cues already in here, but the tag will be missing. So just click on this. You can see it's gameplaycue.weapon.impact. And we just have to add it back. So I'll show you how to do that. Gameplaycue.weapon.impact. Source. Add new tag. Select new tag. And that's it. So we just have to do that for each of the gameplay cues here. Gameplaycue.weapon.fire. Add. Select. And gameplaycue.take damage. Gameplay tags, add, select, done. Right, so I'm inside of my project here on my Windows Explorer. Now mine says Narrative Tutorial blank copy, yours will just say Narrative Tutorial. But all you want to do is go into the Narrative Pro plugin, and in the content folder for that, it has its own movies folder and it's got some MP4 files. And what we're going to do is hit Control-C and just copy these. And we simply just want to paste them into that movies folder that we just made. That's just another thing. It's like the gameplay cues. They have to be in this content folder. They're not allowed to be in the plugins folder, so that's it. At this point, you can either click Restart Now, but if you're using C++, you probably just want to go into Visual Studio here and just click this Restart button. So once you've restarted, you will see that it opens into the demo map because we set that as our sort of default map. And now that you've actually inputted all the settings, this should actually work properly. And to test it out, I'm going to go to current camera location. I'm just going to spawn in where the camera is. I find that to be a little bit nicer. So if you hit play, you should be able to actually jump into the game and you'll see that everything sort of works now. If you press tab, all of the keycaps actually show up. If I start using an Xbox controller, it switches over to those Xbox keys, which is really cool. And also, if we close this, usually you would press escape, but in the editor it's shift escape. And if we go into the settings menu, these should actually now have some values in there. You can go into gameplay, that will have values in there as well. And you can actually change the settings now. So everything should more or less be working. I would also recommend try and take a, there's a rifle on this table here. If you pick that up and press F, just try shooting the rifle and make sure that the FX spawn in. If the FX don't spawn in, you probably didn't set these queues up correctly, and you'll just want to go back and look at that again. Now in the demo level here, there's actually a quest set up, and I would recommend playing the quest through. It's a very basic quest, but it's quite good at showing you how narrative roughly works. So I'm just going to play this through and show you it. If we talk with Seth, you can ask him for a quest.
Give me a quest. You want a quest, huh? Well, I've got just the thing. Come with me.
What's the quest?
Well, the demo level seems pleasant enough, but there's actually an evil bandit camp lurking.
So this level is more or less just an example of how to set up a quest, how to set up dialogue, and because it's right here in the project, you can actually open this quest up. You can see how the quest's made, you can see how the NPCs are made, you can see how all this is set up, and you can even copy paste some of this stuff and use it for your own game. So one of the things you will see in a lot of games, a lot of Rockstar games tend to do this, is these seamless cinematics, where the game seamlessly transitions from your gameplay camera into a cinematic, and there's an example of it here in the demo level. And in this tutorial, we will actually create one of these later on.
Hello boys, what can I do you for? We need weapons, and we need a lot of them, Marco. And what would they be for? Can't say, Marco. It's a secret mission. You know that. Alright. There you go, then.
So those are really easy to make with Narrative Pro, and we're going to show you that later. And we actually seamlessly spawn this little pistol here on the table, and that's a quest step. So you can see when I take this, it will complete the quest task, and it launches into a new quest task.
Seamless cinematic. How do you find this great sequence tools in order to build on these? It's super easy to hold the cinematics and seamlessly bleed right into gameplay. I've seen that feature in ultra games. Exactly. We're trying to open up these features so we can develop this. Think about some of the UI. If you press tab on keyboard or D-pad with controller, you'll be able to see the player info menu. In that menu, you have 4 tabs: inventory, roadmap, quest journal, and skills. You can have more. Those are the defaults. The UI style can easily be changed to suit your game too, whether it's a mod shooter, a medieval RPG, or something else entirely.
So quests are built out of these quest tasks, and you can see that our current quest task is to go to the demo hall. Quests can also use events to drive things like what NPCs do. You can see when we get back to the demo hall, Seth's NPC changes and he becomes a follower of us. He's now following us around, and we need to go and talk to Luca. And that's another quest step. So talking to people is a quest step. Taking out enemies can be a quest step. Finding items. These are all quest steps that are built into narrative, but you can easily create your own, and we'll do that as well in this video.
We're arming an attack on the bandits. Let's go. Oh, yeah, I've been waiting for this day my whole life. Yeah, let's go.
You can also see we handle behavior like getting NPCs to look at each other while they're talking to each other. So little things like this that would take a huge amount of time in your own game are just handled for you.
Bandits might put up a bit of a fight. So let's go pay them a visit.
Here we have an example of an optional quest task as well, so you don't actually have to get some armor, but if you do get some, you can see it completes that optional task there.
What about me?
You just try to stay alive. I also recommend saving your game now in case you die. Here comes the full save system out of the box. It says your player, every NPC, every chance, every skills, list, the whole thing. You can pause your game by pressing shift escape in the editor, and then save by clicking the save button. A really cool hack is that if you have a save game in the first save slot, Narrative Pro will automatically load that save in the editor when you hit play. Don't be afraid.
Try save your game now into save slot 1. You'll be able to close and reopen the game, and you'll be right back here with us, I promise.
So I'm going to show you this here. This is one of the biggest features that Narrative Pro takes care of for you. This is a really difficult system to roll out yourself, and we've taken care of it. So if you pause the game and you save, you can save into save slot 1, and this will save the entire world. It will save your inventory, every chest that you've ever looted from, all of its items will be saved, every NPC will be saved, everything, your health, your XP, it's all saved, all the perks in your skill tree that you've purchased. It's a lot of work that's been into this, but if I create that save and then close, a really cool thing that we've built into the editor here is that if you hit play, it will actually load your save in if you have a save in save slot 1. And so if I hit play here, check this out. you can see it drops me right back into the game exactly where I was. It remembers how much health I had, how much XP I had, all the items I had equipped, where all of the NPCs were standing in the world. Any chest in the world, it will remember all the items that are in that chest. It's very comprehensive. It really does try and save the entire world. In a packaged game, it won't automatically load your save slot 1. It just does that in the editor. It's really useful because, like, imagine you're testing a certain part of a quest. You can save into save slot 1 right before the part you need to test, and then you can test it over and over again by just restarting the game, so it's very useful. So our task is to run to the bandit camp, and when we do that, it will kick off a cinematic.
Stay back. Or what?
And this cinematic actually doesn't spawn a cinecam, it just keeps our gameplay camera, which is also something you can do.
Yeah, come on, guys.
I think we can all agree heroes are better than bandits.
Take that back right now, or we'll end you.
You'll have to kill me first.
So you can see here we need to take out the bandits in the bandit camp.
Listen, say something intimidating. You messed with the wrong guy.
There we go.
Luca, you're getting a promotion to colonel. Oh boy, thank you, Seth.
And narrative interaction also allows you to loot from NPCs. NPCs have a special interaction that lets you talk to them, but also loot from them if you've taken them out. So we're going to take the bandit chief's armor, we can put that on.
This is enough to get you to level 2. When you level up, you get a skill point, which you can...
If I press tab, you can see that I've leveled up to level 2. And if I go into the skills, I can actually purchase perks. You can see I have a skill point available. So for example, I could purchase this godlike strength. And these are those MP4 files that we moved. They show a little preview of what the perk does. So we can, for example, buy that. And now you can purchase later perks in the tree here. Another cool thing you can do is when you discover locations, you can actually fast travel to them. So if I press M, we can actually fast travel back to the demo hall here. You can just click on it to fast travel.
Well, if it isn't the commander himself.
And you can see here, Seth actually has a different greeting now that we've done his
We'll help
quest.
our new commander, right, Luca? Anytime. As long as there aren't too many scary enemies.
And one of the things that we've configured is that once you do the quest, you can actually talk to Luca, and you will have a new option to have him as a follower. That option will only appear if you've actually completed the quest. And of course, you can send him back to his spawn as well. And narrative provides everything you need to very easily do stuff like this. So if we look at Luca's dialogue blueprint here, to make him only be available as a follower after we've done the quest, we've just added a condition to that line that checks if he has actually finished the quest before. If you finish the quest, this line will appear, otherwise it won't. It's also very easy to do stuff like asking someone to see their shop. So actually, Luca is configured as a shop as well. If we open up Luca's NPC definition, you can see he's marked as a shop. And so if you hit play, we can actually go over to Luca, and we can ask to see his shop, and we can actually buy stuff from him if we want. You can see we don't have any money to buy any of his items. However, in the editor here, you can actually use the give currency command. Let's do give currency 100,000. And there's also the give skill points command, which you can use to give yourself skill points if you need. And those are only available in the editor. So you can see if we go back into the game, we've got 100,000 and we can buy some items from Luca if we want some. So we've covered the demo level, but if you actually want to learn narrative, I think it's best to actually try creating your own NPCs and that sort of thing. So that's what the guide's going to be focusing on. We're going to just go through lots of different parts of narrative. We'll be hopping around between different features and just trying to get a really good general feel of the entire plugin. So let's get started. So we're going to make a new map. We'll go new level, open world, create. And I'll just take a player star and drop a player star into the level. And then what I'm going to do is, in my project settings, I'm going to go into the maps and modes. And I'm going to change the editor startup map from the demo map to my map. It should be set to demo map on your end. Change it from demo map to our new map. We actually need to save our new map first as well. So we're going to go save current level as. We're going to put it in a folder, make a new folder called maps if you like, and put it in there. So I'm going to call this main map. We'll click save. And then under editor startup map, we're just going to select main map. So if we hit play in our new main map, you can just see that it actually opens, but the image doesn't really make a lot of sense. And the other issue is that by default, the main menu won't take you into this map. It actually takes you into the demo map, but that's really easy to change. So we're going to go to project settings again. Scroll down and go to Narrative Pro. And you can see there's this game entry map. We're just going to change it to our main map as well. While we're here, I just want to show you some other really cool things. So you can set the gameplay music in here. That you can also set a separate combat music that will play while you're fighting people. And there's also a main menu music that you can set as well. But a really common thing is under gameplay functionality, you will probably want to set the default username. In fact, I'm going to change mine to Ruben. So we're going to make a very first NPC. And to do that, I just made a new NPCs folder. I haven't put anything in there yet. And we're going to right click, go to miscellaneous, and make a new data asset. And search for NPC and select NPC definition. We're going to make a new NPC called Jake. If you open up the NPC asset, you'll see in here that it has automatically filled some of the information out. I'm just going to generate another GUID here. And there's an NPC ID, there's an NPC name. There's a few other settings which I won't go into for now. Invulnerable is quite useful for characters that you don't want to ever die. You can also select the dialogue, what faction they're in, and factions are important because they will define whether enemies are aggressive towards each other or not. By default, we have a few factions included, so I'm just going to put the Jake character into the heroes faction. You can also select a dialogue that will play when you talk to Jake. I'm not going to do one just yet. And for Jake's appearance, I'm going to make it Seth, because I'm not going to make a new appearance yet. We'll go ahead and save that. So how do we actually get Jake in our world? Well, one way that you can do it is you can get the NPC subsystem. This is like the big NPC manager for Narrative Pro. And you can ask that to spawn an NPC. But actually, generally how you'll want to do it is you'll want the NPC to be part of a town or a village. And then when you get near the town or a village, he'll be spawned in, right? And in narrative, this is called settlements. Settlements are kind of how you manage NPCs, and they're really easy to use. Let me show you how to make a settlement. We're going to search for settlement. If you don't have this place actors window, you can just go to window, place actors. I'm going to drag in our new settlement. To set the settlement up, you just have to generate a GUID for it. After you've generated the GUID, we're going to give it a tag. So you need to give the settlement a tag as well. So click this little drop down. And let's say that Jake is going to be in a village. So let's add a settlement tag. We're going to add a sub tag. So it always follows this pattern, narrative.settlements. Whatever you want it to be. So I'm going to call it narrative city. Narrative.settlements.narrative city, and I'm going to select the source, add, check the box there. And you also want to give it a display name. That's going to come up on the UI, so we're just going to type out narrative city. You can also select whether you want narrative city to be a point of interest that is sort of discoverable. So we're going to do that as well. It's very easy to do. Just add a subtag to POIs. So narrative.pois.narrative city. Check the box. And finally, we want to define who actually spawns in this city. So we're going to add a spawn. You just click the little plus here. Again, you need to give it a GUID. And you need to select who spawns here. So we're going to select Jake, the new NPC that we made. It's a little bit hard to see, but you can see in the world, there's actually a spawn here. If I click on it, you can move that spawn around and position Jake where you want him. So I might want him to be sort of facing in this direction. The last thing is a settlement will not activate itself by default. Usually what you want is this thing called a settlement loader. This will activate a given settlement when you get near the settlement, which is what you want. And it does this using world partition, which is something that's built into Unreal Engine. So we drag that settlement loader in, go to the settlement configuration and just click on narrative city. And now what that will do is when you get near this loader, it will load the narrative city settlement in and it will spawn in all the NPCs. The settlement loader will only be spawned in when you're near it, but the settlement will actually always be loaded. However, it might not have the NPCs around if you're far away. This is because imagine you're 50 kilometers away from the settlement. It's obviously not going to be loaded in, but it still needs to appear on the map. Or maybe we want to add a waypoint showing you how to get there. We still need the settlement to be loaded in, and so this is how we do it. We break it into two parts. The loader loads itself in and out with world partition, and the settlement is always available. Anyhow, if you hit play, you should see that our NPC that we made has spawned in, Jake. Now, he's not a very interesting NPC at the moment. He doesn't have any dialogue. He doesn't really do anything. So let's go ahead and make some dialogue for Jake. So we're going to come next to Jake here and go to narrative, dialogue, and I'll just call it DBP_Jake. So we've just made our first dialogue blueprint. Dialogue blueprints are quite cool. They can have code for making the dialogue do stuff. But then they also have a dialogue graph, which is how you define what is said in the dialogue. We're going to go to speakers up here and add a speaker. And we're going to select Jake. We'll just hit this little drop down and select Jake here. I always recommend leaving this first node empty as well. And you'll see why later on. But we're going to add a dialogue line for Jake here. And we're just going to say, hello. I'm Jake. We can add a line for our player. What are you doing here? And we can also add another line. We'll just say goodbye. If a dialogue node isn't connected up to anything else, that will end the dialogue. And for this line, we want Jake to reply. So we're going to drag out and add another dialogue line for Jake. And we'll just say, I'm living it up in Narrative City. And we will compile and save. By default, it will warn you if you're missing audio. You can actually turn that off in the project settings if you want. And we'll go back into our Jake NPC data asset and just make sure that Jake is selected in the dialogue option. And now this will just work. If you hit play and you walk up to Jake, you'll be able to talk to him. Hello, I'm Jake. And we can say goodbye and that will end the dialogue. Or we can say, what are you doing here? And you can see by default, it remembers if you've selected a dialogue option and it will grey it out if you've already selected it. You might also want it to loop back after you've said, what are you doing here, instead of ending the dialogue. To do that, all you have to do is add a backlink. So just drag backwards. And then we could plug it in here and that would make him say, hello, I'm Jake a second time. But if you don't want it to do that, simply just add another empty node. You'll see that empty nodes are actually very useful. You use them quite a lot. And you just hook it up like that. And now it will just skip back to the player options. So I'll show you that. We're going to compile and play. Talk to Jake. What are you doing here? Living it up. And it goes back to the dialogue options again. We can say goodbye now. I want Jake to run around in a little minute, so we're going to take a nav mesh and drag a nav mesh into the game as well. So we're going to do nav mesh bounds volume, and we're just going to make this nice and big. If you press P, you can actually see the bounds of the nav mesh. I think for now that'll do. May as well make it a wee bit bigger. And I'm going to press P to turn that back off again. So what if you want Jake to become a follower? How would you do something like that? And I'm going to introduce you to events now. So we're going to come in here and drag out another option for the player. And I didn't mention this, but the options will appear from left to right. So if I put goodbye over here, goodbye would appear first in the list of dialogue options. So the order of the nodes actually does matter. So I'm going to add a player option here. And I'm going to say, follow me. And check this out. This is pretty cool. We're going to add our very first event. An event is something that fires off some code. And it can do a number of things, but there's a lot of them that come with Narrative Pro. You could actually give the player some XP or begin a quest. But here, we're going to click on Start Following Player. And we're going to expand the drop down, and we're going to go to NPCs to Effect and select Jake. We want Jake to follow us, right? We can compile and save. And if we hit play and go up to Jake, follow me. And check it out, he's now following us around. So let me show you some other cool stuff you can do with NPCs, because you're going to be telling NPCs what to do a lot. These NPC behaviors, they're very useful. You're going to be using them all the time. So let's do another one. So in the level here, I'm just going to drag in a sphere. And I'm going to make Seth run over to the sphere. Now to make him do that, we're going to copy the location of the sphere. But I'm not going to send him right there, because if we try to make him run to where the sphere is, it might actually fail because the sphere will technically be blocking him from getting there, right? So I'm just going to move it over to the side a bit once I've copied it. So just copy, move the sphere over a little bit, and then in your dialogue graph, check it out. We're going to do move to the sphere. And we'll make Jake say, okay. And then we'll add an event. And this time we're going to use the send to destination event. The destination, we're going to paste in that value that we copied. Under NPCs to effect, we're going to do Jake, compile and save, and hit play. And check it out, we're going to talk to Jake. Move to the sphere. And you can see he's going to go over to the sphere. One other thing that's quite important is on the event, there is this option here, event runtime. And this is quite important because I had it set to start. It will start moving him over there when he starts saying this line. If you want him to run to the sphere after he said the line, which makes a lot more sense, you can go to end and select that instead. One last thing, in the quest defaults, there's a whole bunch of settings. I'm not going to go too in depth here, but probably one of the coolest ones is the default dialogue shot. We're going to set it to medium, compile and save. And now it should actually spawn in a cinecam, and you can see we have a more sort of cinematic dialogue. And you can also override it per shot, right? So if you want it to have a different shot for what are you doing here, you can select, you know, for example, a medium 2 shot. Compile and check this one out. If we play, what are you doing here? Uses that 2 shot, and now it cuts back. Another feature that I implemented because it's quite useful is you might notice I can like talk to Jake even if I'm behind him, right? And now the dialogue looks terrible. I'm in the complete wrong spot. Doesn't look very good. there is actually an option that I've added. If you go into the class defaults, there's this auto adjust transform option. If you turn that on, it will move you to this relative location. So now if I'm sort of behind him, it doesn't matter, it will snap me into a more sensible location. As you can see, it'll just automatically adjust my location. Before we start making a quest, I want to show you how to generate a mini-map, because we don't actually have a mini-map. I'm going to put a few things in the level just to actually give the mini-map something to show. So we'll just make a big cylinder. You can do whatever you want. You could add little buildings, anything you like. I'm just going to add a cylinder. And in place actors, I'm going to search for something called a map tile bounds. And you want to put this above your map, because this defines how your map screenshot is taken. So we're going to put it above the map. And you can see there's some options. Map width defines how wide it is. And the number of tiles defines sort of how much resolution there is, as you can see by this comment. So I'm just going to sort of do a real simple map. We'll do sort of 3 tiles is probably fine for the size of my map tile bounds. And go to your plugins, Narrative Pro content, and search for generator, and run the generate map tiles utility widget. And I'm just going to give it a bit more space here. There we go. I'm pretty happy with the default values here. Map tile layers we can get into later. And we'll click on generate tiles. When you do that, you should see a camera spawn in and spawn in all these tiles. So now you can see we have sort of this grid of tiles, and that is it. Once you've done that, if you hit play, you should now have a mini-map. And you can see we do. I can run over here. I can press M to open the world map, and you can see I'll be able to scroll around. Because I made that settlement a POI, it's going to show up. Alright, so how do you make Narrative City discoverable? Well, that's actually quite easy. You want to go to the settlement loader, and when you overlap the settlement loader, it will discover the settlement if it's a POI. So you can add whatever volume you like. I'm going to use a box collision, I think. But you could go with a sphere if you wanted as well. And using the box extent, you can sort of define where your point of interest is, right? So if it's a town, you'd want a big box that sort of wraps over the town. Sometimes a sphere is better. It's kind of up to you. But I'm going to use a box here. Under collision presets, I'm going to go to custom, ignore everything except for pawn. I want it to overlap pawn. And then I'm going to search for bounds and make sure I use the parent attach bound as well. If I hit play now, I should be able to actually walk into the box, and you can see location discovered, Narrative City, and it changes the color of the icon as well. You can see I can now fast travel to it. Let's try that out. So make sure that worked actually. So it looks like that failed. Now sometimes fast traveling can fail if you haven't given enough space for the fast travel to work. So usually that is just because it's a little bit low to the ground. We're just going to move it up a little bit here. And hopefully that should work this time. If we go into the map. There you go. So it's good to actually test these. I think in the future we'll add some better tools for making sure your fast travel spots work properly. So in my content browser here, I've just searched for main menu, and I'm going to open that up because I want to test that the main menu is opening into our new level that we've made. So we're essentially just testing out sort of the behavior gameplay loop. You can see because I have some save game data, it's saying resume and not new game. It will say new game if there's no save data. That's because I still have some save data in slot 5. But if I choose an empty slot, that will start a new game. And hopefully it loads me into the correct map. And there we go. We're in our new map. So the game loop is looking pretty good. And the reason it said location discovered is because I started a new game. Remember, I didn't load the existing one. And we should be able to save. Quit to the menu. Open our save back up. You can see it won't discover this time. Yep, awesome. Looking pretty good. Okay, so we've made our NPC Jake, we've given in some dialogue. Let's go ahead and make a quest, and we'll give Jake to give us the quest in a little bit as well. So we're going to go to narrative, quest, and we'll just call it Jake's quest. We're going to open it up, and we'll give it a name. You can give it a description if you want. And we're going to go to the quest graph here. So allow me to explain how quests work. So in the quest graph here, we have a state. This is the start state, so it only has an output pin. And if you drag off, you build quests using tasks, right? So quests are basically just tasks. Go to this location, then find this item, then talk to this NPC, etc., right? They're sort of the same as an objective. So if, for example, I use the go to location task, basically it's saying we have to go to the certain location, and then if we do that task, we go to this state in the quest. And once you reach a success state, which we can drag out and do success, then you have succeeded the quest. And if you reach a failure state, then you fail the quest. And using this state machine based system, you can actually build some pretty complicated quests, right? So for example, going to this location might take you to this state where you can then fail the quest, but you can also pull it around and save the quest from being failed if you do this. But also you can complete the quest quite quickly by doing this, right? So you can see how you can build some quite complex sort of quests. But anyways, I'm going to delete all of that, and we're going to build a really, really simple quest. So let's fill out a description here. We're going to say, Jake told me to run over to the sphere. I need to do that. And these descriptions will actually show up in the quest journal that comes with narrative, and we'll show you that in a second. But let's add our very first task. One of the most simple tasks that comes with narrative is go to location. So we're going to add that. And then I'm just going to minimize this and find where that sphere is. And again, I'm just going to copy the location of the sphere. I'm going to go back into the quest. And I'm going to go to the goal location and set it to the sphere's location. And this is the tolerance, how close you have to get to the sphere. I'm going to make that 250. And the friendly location name, I'm going to say the sphere. You can also check the box to invert it, so you actually would have to get at least 250 centimeters from this location, but we're going to leave that unchecked. And for now, we will just remove that and add a success state. And on the success state, I'll add a little description. We'll just say quest complete. So we're going to compile, save, and we'll go back to Jake's dialogue. And we'll add a dialogue option. So we'll say, need any help? And then we will say, yes, go to the sphere. And to begin the quest we just made, we can use an event. There is an event and it is called Begin Quest, so just select that one. And then you simply need to tell it what quest you want to begin. And you can even give it an ID. If you want to skip to a later state that isn't quest start, you can actually make it a different one if you want as well. So We'll compile, save, and hit play. Alright, so we're going to try our quest out that we made by talking to Jake. And you can see if we say need any help, he says yes, go to the sphere. And by default, the go to location task will add a navigation marker. You can turn that off if you would like. And I'll just show you in the quest journal here. If I press tab, go to the quest journal, you can see that it's tracked. And if I click untrack, it will remove any map markers. So if I untrack it, you can see it doesn't appear anymore. So that can be quite useful if you have a lot of quests going at once. You can see Jake told me to run over to the sphere. I need to do that. Go to the sphere. And so if we do that, you can see quest succeeded. Very nice. And in the quest journal, it should be finished now. And you can see it is. Very nice. And say that you only wanted Jake to be able to be a follower if you've completed his quest. What you could do is add a condition. So if we go into the dialogue and we go to the follow me option, I can actually add a condition to that. I can say, is quest succeeded? And I can select Jake's quest. And now if I compile, save, and hit play, and now if we hit play and do his quest, so you can see we cannot have him as a follower, but if we do his quest, we will now be able to have him as a follower. There you go, follow me. Very nice. The next thing that you might want to do is you might want to give one of your NPCs some items, and the way to do that is using an item loadout. If you go into the NPC definition, you can see it's got this option for default item loadout. You can also set how much money Jake has as well. If you wanted to give him, say, 5,000 of the currency, you can do that. You can also check the box whether or not he's a vendor, which we will get into later. But if we go to default item loadout, I'm going to add one here. And you can see there's a table to roll, right? So this is useful for loot tables, and you can sort of randomize his loadout a little bit, but you don't have to make his loadout random. Let's go ahead and make a miscellaneous data table. And then for the row, we just want to go to loot table row. I'm going to call this loadout underscore Jake. So this is Jake's default item loadout. To define the loadout, you simply have to add a row to this data table. You can put items to grant, and there's also this thing called item collections to grant. There are a few that come with Narrative Pro. Item collections are basically just exactly what they sound like. They're just a collection of items. So they're just an easier way. Say I want to give him a set of armor. I can just give him the example armor set item collection, and that has all of the armor pieces in it. So I don't have to manually add them all, which can be quite annoying. So we'll remove these items here. I'm just going to grant him the example armor set item collection, and I'm also going to grant him the pistol with ammo item collection. And the chance is set to 1, which means he will get given this item every time. But if you wanted to, you could make it a 0.5 chance. So there's only a 50% chance that he will actually get given these items. So up to you how you want to do it. I'm going to do 1 just so that he always has these items. So I'll save, and I'm going to add his item loadout Jake. You can also define how many times we roll that table. So that table will give him those items every time. And so if you roll the table 5 times, it just basically means give him that table 5 times. And again, you can define how, what the chance is in here as well. I'm just going to leave these as the defaults. And now if I hit play, Jake should actually have some armor. And you can see he does. By default, there are certain items that will do things when added to your inventory, and equippable items will automatically equip themselves when they get added to a character's inventory. So that's what's happened to Jake here. He's been given this item. May as well show you a few more cool things you can do from Dialog. So let's get rid of some of these. We don't really need too many of these. We'll get rid of this one. And we're going to add show me or trade with me. We'll add an event to this. And you can see there's this one here. It's called Start Trading with NPC. At the moment, you do have to put Jake in there, but I would like to remove that in future releases because you shouldn't really have to put that. And there we go. And the reason that we're not able to actually trade with him is because there is a separate inventory that is used for trading. And so we can't take his armor from him. If you do want Jake to be a trader, you just want to check this box that says is vendor. And you can see there's a separate loadout that he has for his shop per se, right? So we're going to add a trading loadout. We'll just give him the same loadout for trading as the one that he has equipped. And now he'll have his armor, but he'll also have a separate set of armor that you can actually buy from him. And we can't afford any of these because you can see we don't actually have any currency. But if you open the command console, you can actually do give currency 100,000, and that will give you some money. You can see we have 100,000 now, so we could actually buy these items. You can see by default they are auto-equipping themselves. There we go. Now we have some armor. We can unequip our pistol. Let's go ahead and save. Nice. So how do we make sort of enemy settlements like that bandit camp that is in the demo level? Well, really easy to do. Let's go ahead and make another NPC. We're going to go into the NPCs folder. We're going to make a folder called Jake, and we'll put all of Jake's stuff in here. Let's make another folder called Thug. And these are going to be people that will fight. So in the Thug folder, I'm just going to go to miscellaneous, data asset, NPC definition, NPC underscore thug. And I just need to fill some of this information out. So the ID, I'll make it thug. Again, we'll just do thug here. Appearance, I'll just do Seth again. In fact, let's click this little magnifying glass to go to the Seth appearance. And I'm just going to copy that by pressing Control-C. I'm just going to paste it in here and rename it to appearance thug. So the appearance is where you define what the NPC looks like. And you can see Seth's appearance is extremely simple, right? It's just that one mesh. I'm just going to change it to red. We'll save. For the Thugs faction, we're going to assign them to that Bandits faction that comes with narrative. So back in the Thug here, we're going to change it to Appearance Thug. Make sure to give it a unique GUID. And with the Thug, I want to check this box that says Allow Multiple Instances, because there should be lots of thugs spawned in. If I go to the Thug area and there's 3 thugs there, I need multiple instances to be turned on. Otherwise, narrative will enforce it and make sure only one is spawned in at any time if I leave that unchecked. So you want to make sure that's checked. So for non-unique characters like bandits or goblins or whatever, make sure that's checked. If you have a unique character like a king or something that there should only be one of, then you want it to be unchecked. So I'm going to make a separate settlement for the bandits to be spawned in. I'm just going to take the settlement and the settlement loader, and I'm actually literally just going to copy these. You can hold Alt on your keyboard, and with them selected, you can just drag out, and you can see it's created some separate settlements. And I'm going to give these some better names. I'll call this Settlement, Thug, Camp, settlement loader, thug camp, and settlement narrative city, and settlement loader narrative city. Alright, so I'm going to click on my thug camp and I'm going to configure the thug camp. So because I copy and pasted them, I need to set this up. So I'm going to generate a new ID for it. I need to add a new tag. So settlements, add thug camp. There we go. I'm going to make it a POI as well, because why not? So we'll just do POIs, add thug camp. Select that one. Change the display name. We're going to go down to the spawns. Obviously, we do not want Jake to spawn at the thug camp. We want our thug to spawn at the thug camp. And make sure that you give it a new spawn ID, because it needs to have its own unique ID. And the thug camp loader needs to load the thug camp instead of the narrative city one. And let's add a few more spawns as well. We'll make it spawn a couple of thugs instead of just the one. So I'm just going to duplicate. Make sure you give it a unique ID. And I'll just go to the transform and just sort of move it over to the side here. So now we have two thugs that spawn here. I'm also just going to change the rotations just so that they face towards the city. In order to give the thugs a loadout, I'm just going to go into my Jake folder and copy Jake's loadout and just paste that in. I'm just going to rename it to loadout thug. I'm going to open that up and go to my thug NPC definition and add the thug loadout to the thug. So now my thugs should have armor and a pistol. So let's actually try this out. If I hit play, you guys remember I saved my game, so my character's here, he's got a gun. And you can see there are some thugs over here. Let's see if they attack us or not. You can actually see on the map, their markers are white, so they're actually neutral, they're not enemies, and so they're not going to attack us when they see us. In order to make the thugs aggressive towards us, we need to set up our factions. We need to say who is enemies with who is friendly with who, and so on. And to do that, you just go into the game state. So if we search in our content folder for game state and open that up, you can see in here we have this sort of faction alliance map. You can see that the bandits are neutral with the heroes by default. The heroes are neutral with the bandits by default. So we've sort of added a couple of little example ones. But we just need to make it so that the bandits are hostile towards the heroes. And your character is in heroes by default as well. And we can change that as well, and I'll show you that in a bit. You don't have to worry about changing both of these. If one faction is hostile towards the other, then both will be hostile towards the other. We're going to hit play now, and this time you can see on the compass they actually show up as red. And not just that, but they should actually attack us when they see us as well. And you can see they've drawn their pistols, they're reloading, and they're shooting us. And actually I'll probably die here because I'm quite outnumbered. And there you go. And actually, it's a good segue into the death screen. So this is the screen that comes up by default. Respawn will reload your last save, and quit to menu will just take you to the menu. So if I click respawn, it should hopefully take us back to that last save that we had. And you can see that it does. We're right back to where we were. You can see here that if I go into the game state and make the bandits friendly towards us, they will actually appear as green on the map, and they certainly will not attack us. I'm going to set them back to being neutral, so they will neither attack us, but they're not friendly towards us either. They just appear as white on our compass. By default, and you can change this if you want, neutral NPCs will actually attack you if you attack them. So they won't attack you when they see you like enemies will, but they will attack you if you damage them. And you can see they've started shooting us. Alright, so I'm going to show you some more of the tasks here. So we're going to come into Jake's quest, and I've just deleted that branch from the middle. And we'll drag out, and I'm going to show you another useful one that comes with Narrative Pro. If we go to Settlement, Clear Settlement, and we'll hook that up. And then you need to select the settlement that needs to be cleared. So we're going to go down to settlements.thugcamp and check that box. This is quite an interesting task. When you clear an entire settlement out, that will complete the task. So let's modify this as well. We'll say Jake told me to clear out the thug camp. Compile and save. And I just changed the line for Jake so he says, let's go get those bandits instead. To make the thugs a little bit easier to take down, I'm going to open their loadout and I'm going to remove their armor set from them so they no longer have an armor set. Now, before we try this new quest where we have to take the thugs out, I just want to show you guys a little bit more on looting and pickups. So if you search in the content browser for loot, you'll find this, the Lootable Chest, and you can just drag this right into the level here. This Lootable Chest comes with a narrative inventory component, which is what the items go in. So we're going to add default item tables. There's actually one that comes with narrative armor, which has some armor pieces. I'm going to roll that 3 times. Basically, it just gives you either some example armor or some dark example armor. And we're also going to roll the weapons table, which will give you a sword, a pistol, or a rifle. And we'll roll that 3 times. The other thing I will touch on is pickups. So if we search for pickup, you can see here is the interactable item pickup. And you can drag one of these into the level here. And you simply need to select an item class. So if I do example helmet, you can see it spawns a little helmet pickup here. So if I jump in here and I go up to the chest, it should be populated with some weapons and some armor. So what it's done is it's rolled that weapons loot table 3 times and it's rolled the armor loot table 3 times. So I'm going to take some of these items, take a rifle here, some ammo, and we're going to go ahead and let's try the quest out. So you can see that it's added a waypoint. You can turn the waypoints off if you don't want them, and I'll show you that in a second. But we're going to press F to get my rifle out. And the thugs are neutral, so they're not actually going to attack me unless I attack them first. And you can see here the clear settlement task working. It's completed the quest because I cleared the thug camp out. And you can also see they died really quick because we took the armor off of them. Now, you're probably wondering, how do we get Jake to actually come and do the quest with the player? How do we get him to fight the thugs with us? Well, the first thing we're going to do is in the game state, I'm just going to make the bandits hostile towards the heroes. And that'll just make it a little bit easier. When Jake and the thugs see each other, they'll just automatically start attacking each other. We don't really have to make that happen. I'm going to go into Jake's quest here, and we'll click on Quest Start, and you can actually add events to quest nodes as well. So we're going to do that. And we're going to say send to destination. And basically, we're going to get him to run to the thug camp. So if we go to the thug camp, I'm just going to copy the location of the thug camp, and I'm going to paste that in. And that is basically it. I'll just have to add Jake here under NPCs to effect. And this should make him run to the thug camp. And if you don't want him to leave the player behind, you can set it to go to location, stay with player, which is a special version of the behavior tree that will keep him within the range of your player. So if he gets too far away, he'll stop and he'll wait for you to catch up. We are going to save. I've got my spawn player set to current camera location, so I just need to make sure I'm not near the thug camp, otherwise they'll attack me. So I'm going to go over to the city, hit play, hit play, and I'm going to grab some items so that I can actually fight the bandits. I wouldn't recommend getting a sword until you add animations. So we're going to take all of this and we'll talk to Jake and start the quest. And now he should actually come with us over to the thug camp. And because he's in the heroes faction, and you can see the thugs are red, they're marked as enemies, they should actually start fighting each other. So he's going to help us take them out. And there you go. This works quite nicely. Now, when the quest finishes, you'll notice that he just stands there. We need to actually tell him to go back to his settlement. And in order to do that, it's quite simple. We will come back into the quest, and in the complete state, we're going to go to events, and we're going to click on Return to Settlement. So, as you remember, we added Jake to the narrative city settlement that we made. When you tell him to go somewhere, it will release him from that settlement. And we need to basically send him back to the settlement. And so you can do it using this. I'm going to select Jake. And I'm not sure why there's a destination actually. That might be a bug because you shouldn't need to set a destination here. And so you should notice this time if we play through the quest again. And we take out the thugs. There he goes. He's going to run back. There he goes. He's back at the settlement. So I showed you guys earlier with the save system. If you take a bunch of items and save your game, it will remember the items that you had taken. But it does even a bit more than that. For example, pickups. If you take a pickup and I was to then save and restart, you can see it correctly remembers that the pickup is gone. It shouldn't be there anymore. So the save system is really useful, and things like the lootable chest and your inventory and NPCs, basically the entire world, it is saved for you out of the box. But if you create any new things, you need to make them saved. And so I'm going to show you how to do that. We're going to kill two birds with one stone because I'll show you how to do interaction as well. So I've made a folder called Blueprints in the content folder, and I'm going to go to Blueprint class and make a new actor. And I'm going to call this BP Number Generator. We're going to open it up and we'll go to Components and add a sphere. And we'll also add a text render. And we'll set the horizontal alignment to center. And we'll just move it up a little bit here as well. So this is a very boring sphere with some text above it. So how do you make it interactable? Well, it's actually really easy. Just search for interact and add a interactable component. Don't add an interaction, make sure you add an interactable component. And now we have a sphere that you can actually interact with. If you click on the interactable, you can set up how the interaction works. So instead of calling it the interactable object, I'm going to call it a sphere. And for the action text, I'm going to say generate number. I'm going to compile and save. And I'm going to click on the sphere, and I just need to do one little change here. Under collision presets, you need to go to custom and make sure that narrative interaction is set to block. Otherwise, it will not know that we're looking at the number generator. And then we'll go back to the interactable and click on interacted. And this lets you define what actually happens when we interact with the actor. So I'm just going to do a print string and just say interacted. And we'll compile and save. And if I drag my number generator into the level here and hit play, I can run up to it, and if I press E, it just says interacted. So to make it generate a random number, this is actually quite easy. We're just going to right click and do random integer in range. And we're going to generate a random number between 0 and 1000. And we're going to store it in a variable. So we're going to right click, promote to variable. I'm going to say random number. And we're going to do that. And then we're going to grab our text render and we're going to set the text to show the random number that we generated. So we'll drag in the random number and we can plug it in like that. And if we hit compile and save, you'll see what happens here is when I run up to my random number generator and I interact with it, you can see it generates a random number between 1 and 1000 every single time that I interact with it. Now, here's the thing. If I generate a random number like 510 and then I restart the game, when I come back in, you can see it doesn't know the number anymore. And this is because the save system does not save this actor. We need to tell the save system how to save it, and it's really easy to do. So we'll go to class settings, interfaces, and add the savable actor interface. To tell the save system to save that random number, just click on random number and check the box that says save game in the advanced section here, save game. And then under interfaces, we're going to go to get actor GUID and we're going to right click, promote to variable. We're going to call this the save GUID. So the save system just needs a GUID to remember the actor by. And if you go to the construction script and drag in save GUID, you can just do create save GUID. And we'll hit compile and save. And then the last thing we're going to do is on begin play, we're just going to set the text to the random number like that. The other thing you want to remember to do is check this little box here that says instance editable. The reason you want this is because each number generator needs to have its own ID, right? So if you have multiple of them, it will save all of them. In fact, let's do that. Let's go to our number generator and we'll just hold Alt and drag out to make a second one. Now, if you duplicate them, you just need to remember to generate a new GUID so that they have a unique GUID. And this should now work. If I generate a number, you can see this one's set to 755. I'm going to set this one 576. I will save. And if I restart the game, you can see that they are as I left them. Now this is obviously a very simple example. I'm just saving a number, but this exact method is what we use to save basically everything. Whatever variable you have, whether or not it's a random number or a color or anything like that, simply mark it as save game, and that variable will automatically be saved to disk for you.
So just a few other things to note with regards to saving actors. As well as doing get actor GUID, which is what we did, I'd also recommend implementing set actor GUID. This is just the opposite, so if you just hold Alt and drag this in, that's all you need to do there. You only need to implement set actor GUID for things that get dropped, spawned in, etc. But it's good practice to just implement it all of the time. Another thing to note is that the save system will automatically save the transform of any savable actors. Just to show you that in action, I'm going to make it so that when we interact, I'm just going to do add actor local offset. And I'm just going to move it 100 units up and do teleport. And compile and save. That when I interact with the sphere, you can see it moves it up. And because the save system automatically remembers the transforms, if I save and come back in, you can see it remembered the transform of the savable actor.
Alright, so I'm just switching back and forth a little bit between different parts of Narrative Pro just to kind of keep things interesting. So we're going to take a look at making some different items. Now, narrative inventory lets you make basically any item you could ever want. But there are some ones that actually come with Narrative Pro that sort of do some of the work for you. So I'm going to make a new folder called Items here in my Blueprints folder. And we're going to try and make our very first gameplay effect item. So these are really useful for things like food, potions, etc. Narrative Pro's combat and stats are based on gameplay ability system, which is quite a commonly used system. A lot of people will have heard of it. And these gameplay effect items apply a gameplay effect. So they can add stamina, they can add health, they can take away health, they can do basically anything to your attributes. So we're going to make one here and I'll show you how to use it. It's quite simple. We're going to call this GEI Health Potion. So we're going to make our very first gameplay effect item. So I'm going to call this GEI Cupcake. So this is going to be a food item that heals the player. You can see by default it applies this item gameplay effect to the player, and if you're familiar with gameplay ability system, feel free to have a look at that. It's very simple, but you don't really need to know how it works. All you need to know is that if you want to add some health, for example, just add health here and then input the amount of health you want to add. So let's make the cupcake give you 10 health. There is actually a cupcake mesh included in the plugin, which is why I selected cupcake. So we're going to go with cupcake here. There's also a thumbnail you can use, cupcake, and I'm going to call this tutorial cupcake. I'm going to make it weigh 200 grams, and I'm going to make it so that you can have up to 20 of them in a stack. So, and then I'm going to save. And I'm going to duplicate my cupcake, and I'm going to make one called the Cursed Cupcake. This is going to be a bad cupcake that takes some health away from you, but I'm going to make this a little bit more interesting. If you click this drop down, you can actually use the gameplay effect duration here. And what that will do is it will apply the effect every second for the specified amount of time. So I'm going to add another entry here, and I'm going to go duration and set the duration to every 1 second. And I'm going to say 5 health. And in fact, I'm going to do -5 health. So it'll take 5 health away every second for 10 seconds. Sorry, I need that to be 10. And we'll compile and save. So in the place actors menu, I'm going to drag a couple of item pickups in, and I'm going to select the cupcakes. And there are a couple that actually come with narrative, but make sure you select GEI Cupcake, the one that we made. Just going to move that up a little bit. If you hold Alt and drag out, that will create a duplicate. And because these are saved, these pickups, you need to make sure to give it a new ID if you ever duplicate them. And then we're going to go and make this second one the Cursed Cupcake item. And for the quantity, I'm going to select 5 for both of these, so we actually get a few of them. And we'll hit play. And you can see for the Cursed Cupcake, I'm just going to give that a different name, actually. I'm going to give my Cursed Cupcakes a different name too. Under Cursed Cupcake, I'm just going to change that from Tutorial Cupcake to Cursed Cupcake. If I hit play, we can take one of the Cursed Cupcakes and the Tutorial one. And if I eat the Cursed one, you can see it takes 5 health away every second. And I think the way gameplay ability system works, this will actually do 11 times. So I should go down to 45. Yep. And now we can eat the tutorial cupcake. And that adds 10 health to me instantly. That's a one-off effect. And you can see in the stats there, it also gives me 10 health in the stats. And I'll show you how to add stats as well. If you open up the Cursed Cupcake and you scroll down to the bottom, you can see that it has these stats by default. And basically what it will do is it'll show the stat as long as the stat is implemented. So, for example, because the cupcake item has 10 health, that stat is implemented so it will show up. But you can easily add your own stats. So let's do that. Inside of the Cursed Cupcake, I'm going to add a stat. And I'm going to say for this display name, I'm just going to say curse, and we'll make the string variable the same name. And then to implement a string variable, just open the blueprint editor, go to get string variable, and we're going to hook that up, and then we're going to say switch on string. And you remember I called my string variable curse, so we will plug that in there, and then we'll copy and paste that. And then you can do whatever you want here. You could return the player's username, you could return the amount of health the cupcake heals. In my case, I'm just going to return the text evil. So let's go ahead and take the cupcake, and if I hover over it, you can see curse evil. So you can implement any stat you want. Right, so we're going to right click and go to narrative, items, and we're going to make a new clothing item. So I'll just call it CI underscore, and then let's just say tutorial chest plate. And we'll open that up. And you can see in the clothing item, it has all the stuff that any normal item would have, but it has some extra options under this equippable section here. So we're going to click the drop down, and I am just going to use the example armor that comes with narrative. If you have some money, you can go and buy some armor packs off the marketplace, or you can use this one that's built in. And you can see that when you select the mesh, it will automatically add the materials to this array here. And I sort of made a few different sort of custom ones. Let's actually go ahead and make a fun little different one. So I'm just going to go to this armor chest chief, and I'm just going to duplicate it, and we'll just call that tutorial. And if you open that up, it will just let you make the color a little bit different. So if we go in here, go down to tint, make the armor whatever color you want. Maybe you want it to be a green color. We'll save that. And we're going to go to this drop down and select that new green armor that we made. Looks a little bit Halo almost. And you can see that by default it provides an attack rating and an armor rating as well. So all clothing items have this out of the box in narrative. And you can extend it and add your own if you want. But let's just say that it has 15 attack bonus once you have this on. And let's say it's got 50 armor rating. Equippable items can also grant abilities, and this is less relevant for clothing items, but you'll see it a little bit in the case of weapons like pistols and swords. Pistols and swords need different abilities. The sword will have a melee ability, the pistol might have a fire ability, so it's a little bit more relevant, and we'll talk about that when we get to the weapons. For the pickup mesh, if you just search for chest, there is this one here, armor chest drop. There's also a thumbnail example chest plate. We'll just use that one, and we're just going to say tutorial chest plate. Description, I'll just say our custom chest plate. And the equippable slot is quite important, so that will define what mesh this changes. Now, because this is armor for the torso, we want to make sure that we select torso. And clothing items will also by default display how much armor they add and attack rating they add, and these variables are implemented for you. Anyways, with all that out of the way, I'm going to compile and save. We're going to do something a little bit different this time. Instead of adding the example armor as a pickup, we're actually just going to put it right into your inventory by default. So if you search for CD underscore player, you can actually hit Control B to browse to it. And you can see in the Narrative Pro folder, you've got the player definition. That includes the appearance, the default loadout, and so on. And so if we open up the default loadout, we can simply add the item right in there. By default, we do give you some ammo for your weapons, but we're just going to add an extra line. Tutorial chest plate. And because it is a clothing item, when it gets added to our inventory, it will auto equip. So if I hit play, it should just have the armor right on there already equipped. And you can see there we go. We've successfully added a new piece of armor to the game. And if you come over here to chest, you can actually unequip it. A quick side note that I'll add as well, and I won't go into this too much, but if you go to narrative items and make a equippable item, this is more of a base class for an equipment item. So the clothing item, what that does is it changes your character's mesh like we did with the chest plate. With a equippable item, the way that that works is you define how it equips. So let's say in your game you want a special type of equippable and it puts particles on your player, you know, it makes your player leave a cool glowing trail behind or whatever. You could make an equippable item, and to define what it actually does, you just override handle equip and handle unequip. And then you can get the owning pawn, and you can, you know, add the particles to them or do whatever you want, and you can remove the particles here. So if you want to make a equippable item that's a little bit different from the clothing or weapon items, that's how you would do it. But I'm going to show you how to make a weapon item. Now, there are a couple of types of weapon item that come with narrative. There's the base weapon item, but there's also a special type of weapon item called a ranged weapon item, and that's made specifically for sort of pistols and rifles and things like that. So we're going to make a ranged weapon item, and ranged weapon items aren't in this list here. You actually have to go to blueprint class, and then if you search for ranged weapon item, you can see it's here. And we're going to select that, and we're going to call this RWI underscore tutorial pistol. So we're going to make a pistol. If you open it up, it's quite similar to the equippable clothing item, except you'll see it has a lot of options here under weapon. So this may look a little bit confusing, but it's actually quite simple. So we'll start with the weapon anim layer. So this is the animation blueprint that we will apply to your character when you equip this weapon. So for the pistol, we want your character to play pistol animations. Now, narrative doesn't come with animations necessarily, but we are allowed to use the Lyra animations as a demo, and we include that in the plugin. So you can simply just click Lyra demo pistol, and that's kind of a pre-made one with the Lyra animations that will work really well. The other thing you need is a weapon visual class. That is kind of the actual pistol actor that gets spawned in. So we need to make one of those. So what we're going to do is we're going to make one by right-clicking, blueprint class. If you search for weapon visual, you can make one. And I'm going to call this BP underscore tutorial pistol visual. Open that up, and if you click on the weapon mesh, you want to set it to a mesh. Now, if you have access to the Unreal Marketplace and you want to buy some pistols or whatever, you can do that, but we actually include a pistol with the narrative plugin that we've made for you. So you can select pistol narrative, and here it is. It also comes with an animation blueprint here. I believe it's called Whip Pistol. And the other thing you'll have to do in your pistol visual is if you go to the class defaults, you can set up all sorts of things, right? So what particles should it spawn when you shoot it? Again, we include the ones from Lyra as sort of demo ones, but you also want to set up how should the reload montage be. So if we search for reload, you can see that there's this one up the top here that comes with narrative. We're going to use that. If you actually double click on this, right, you can see that's your reload animation. For the fire montage, we're going to search for pistol fire, and then I believe we want this one here at the top, and we're going to compile and save. And so that's basically the pistol visual. And again, if you have Unreal Engine Marketplace, feel free to swap this out. We're going to go back into our tutorial pistol, and under the visual class, we now have a visual. So we can plug that in, tutorial, pistol visual. By default, it will attach to the right hand. You can change that if you want. It's also got a socket for when we holster the pistol. Do we put it on the hip, or where do we put it? And in the config, because it's a ranged weapon item, it has some extra sort of things that you can configure. So is it automatic fire? What's the rate of fire? How much damage should it do? What sort of ammo does it use? And so on. For the settings, I believe there are actually, yeah, there's the thumbnail here, example pistol. And I'm going to say display name, tutorial, pistol. Feel free to customize these. You don't have to follow the same name that I have and stuff. You can try and create your own items. And now I'm going to add that tutorial pistol that we made to our inventory. And if you remember how to do that, again, you just find that player definition. And in there is the player's loadout. If you open the loadout up, we can just add an item. And we can add that tutorial pistol to the inventory and save. If we hit play, you will see a few problems, right? You'll notice that if you get the pistol out, that will sort of work. You can press F to unholster it. And if you attack, it just punches, right? And what's happening here is it's using the unarmed attack. And that's because the pistol is not granting us any abilities. If we want to shoot the pistol, we need the pistol to grant us a shoot ability, right? And the sword, it would grant us a melee sword attack ability. So how do you grant these abilities? Well, it's quite easy. We're going to go back into our pistol. And if we go to where it says abilities, we can just add an ability. And there's one that comes with the plugin. It's called Weapon Hit Scan. This is kind of the base firing ability. And there's another one called Aim as well, which we're going to add to the pistol. Weapon Aim. And if you're familiar with gas, you can actually see how these work. So for example, the Weapon Aim ability, if we browse to that, you can open that up. And a lot of these are quite simple. So the aiming ability sort of changes your camera modes. It applies a gameplay effect to you and so on. If we jump into the game here, you can see if I unholster my pistol, I can fire it, I can aim. Very nice. The other thing that you will have seen there is that we have basically infinite ammo, and that's because under the config, there is a required ammo item that you can plug in. So we're going to do ammo pistol here, and we're going to make the clip size of the pistol 10. And now if you actually save that and jump in, you'll see in the bottom corner that it actually uses that reloading now, and it shows us how much ammo we have. Last thing I'm going to show you here with this pistol is you'll actually notice that if I press F and get the pistol out, if I jump out of the game, if I click detach here, this actually lets you see how your character's holding the pistol, and you can see the pistol is not in the right place. This is actually really easy to fix. If you want to fix this, search for the pistol visual here in the outliner. And then you can use the transform tools to sort of move it around a wee bit and get it how you like it. So that's obviously not perfect. You'd want to spend a bit more time getting it exactly how you want it. But then all you need to do is just copy the location and the rotation values and go back into the pistol. And you can see, where is it? Weapon attach offset. You just want to plug those values in. It's that rotation and that location. And now if I compile and save, it will actually be in the right location this time. If I get it out, you can see my character is actually holding the pistol properly now. Alright, let's go back to navigation and maps, and we'll talk about that a little bit. If you ever want to add something to the map, if you want to make it sort of show up on the map, so here I've got this chest, right? What if I want the chest, for whatever reason, to show up on the map? How do you do that? Well, it's quite easy. So if we go to the chest here, normally you wouldn't just add it in the world, you'd add it to sort of your blueprint. But in this case, I'm just going to add it to the world here. And you just want to add a navigation marker. It's that simple. You just add it like that. And in here, you can configure how it shows up. So I'm going to say, by default, it shows up on the compass, the minimap, and the world map. Maybe you even want it to show up on the screen space. So if you do that, what's going to happen is when I hit play, you can see it actually will be on my screen. So that's a little bit intense most of the time. So I'll remove the screen space one. I'll keep it on my compass, minimap, and world map. And under default marker settings, you can actually set the marker up. So I'm going to say my special chest, and I'm going to make it a pink color. And if I save and hit play, you can see I've got a nice pink marker. If I go into the world map and hover over it, my special chest comes up. So yeah, very nice. That's how you add custom markers. I'm sure a lot of people will also be curious about how to make book items. So let's make a book here. So I'm going to search for narrative book. You can see it's BI narrative book. I'm going to call this BI my tutorial book. So for the book, there's quite a few things you need to add to it. So it's got this array of pages. If I actually open some of these up, it actually comes with a few pages added by default. And what you can do is you can sort of export this into Photoshop and put your own stuff in here. You can use it as sort of a template to see where you need to put the content. But yeah, you can add as many pages as you want in here. And you also need to add a cover texture. And again, you'll probably want to export this and add this into Photoshop and create your own book cover. So you can do that really easily by browsing to it and just right clicking, and you just have to go to export and then you can create your own covers that way. So we'll call this tutorial book. We'll go into our player's default loadout, and just like we added the pistol and the tutorial chest plate, we're just going to add that tutorial book that we added. And you can see right away this will just work. If we read the tutorial book, you can see it opens that beautiful 3D book reader, and it also has some special UI. So A and D will actually flip through the pages. It's pretty cool. This is really awesome for sort of RPGs, and if you've ever played Skyrim, they have a similar system. And there you go. So that's quite a nice thing to be able to implement. Obviously, you'll want to create your own pages to put in the book as well. Lootable chests can also require that you have a certain item to loot the chest. So if I run up to this chest, you can see I can loot from it without any item. But if you wanted it so that you need sort of a key or something like that to open the chest, simply go to the loot interaction on the chest, and you can see requires item to unlock. So we made that cupcake item earlier. So let's just make it so that you need a cupcake in order to open the chest. And if we hit play now, you can see tutorial cupcake required to open. And if I have a tutorial cupcake, now we can open the chest. Obviously, usually it would be like a key item rather than a cupcake. And actually, speaking of random items like keys, a lot of the time, you will just want to make a base narrative item. So we've covered some of the more sort of specialized types of items, but you can just make a base narrative item. So I'll just call it key, for example. And that is basically just an item that doesn't necessarily have to do anything. But if you want it to do something, you can just go to the functions here, and you can override the onUse function, and you can make it do whatever you like. Okay, so what I want to do now is I want to jump into melee combat as well, because we sort of covered the firearms. Let's go ahead and do melee weapons as well. So you can see here we have this demo sword that comes with the plugin. And instead of implementing a sword from scratch, I'm actually just going to use this demo one. Because Lyra doesn't have any sword animations, we use the pistol ones, and they actually work surprisingly well. So let's give our player a demo sword. I'm going to come into the... In fact, we already have some weapons in that chest. I bet you there'll be a sword in there if I loot from my chest. Yeah, you can see, there we go. There's a sword in there. But you can also add it to your player's default items. So if you equip the swords, you can see by default it's sort of set up to be on your back. And if you unholster it, you can see the pistol animations are surprisingly good. If you want to sort of replace them, you know, you definitely can, but I think they work quite well. You'll notice that when you attack with the sword, the animations just really don't look that good. It should work. Like you can see I can hit Jake here. I don't know if I've marked Jake as invincible actually, so you might be able to take him down. Maybe not. But yeah, you can see the animations here do play. They're just not very good. So what you're almost certainly going to want to do is add your own custom animations in. So let's jump into that. Now, feel free to skip this step if you're not interested in the melee combat, but I have grabbed a marketplace animation pack called the Sword Anim Set Pro. You can use whatever melee animations you want. They just have to work with the Unreal Engine 5 skeleton. That's the one that Narrative uses by default. I mean, you don't have to use that skeleton, but we've kind of given you everything set up with that skeleton already, so I would recommend using it. It's a great skeleton. There's a lot of animations and art out there for it. And in this folder, I have a whole bunch of animations. Now, you do need to make montages out of them. So, for example, I like this animation here. And all you need to do is just right-click and just make an anim montage out of it. And you can see I've got an animation montage for it here. So go into Narrative Pro Content, open up the sword. And you can see, just like how the pistol did, if we go down to abilities, the sword grants you this sword melee attack ability. If you open the sword melee attack ability up, in the class defaults, it's got a bunch of animations that you can plug in. You can see here they are here, attack animations and heavy attack animations, and it's using these pretty underwhelming Lyra animations by default. So now we can plug our amazing marketplace ones in and they're going to work a lot better. So you just take the marketplace animation that you want to plug in, and you've got attack animations and heavy attack animations. So if you hold the left mouse button, it will do a heavy attack, and if you just click it, it will do a light attack. So what we're going to do is we're going to drag this and we'll just put it in heavy attack for now. And got another one here that I'll plug in. Let's do that one too. And I'm actually just going to copy the heavy attacks. You can press shift right click and then just paste them in here. So I'm going to make the heavy and light attacks the same for now. I can add different animations for my heavy attacks later. And if you do that, and we again grab a sword, and just to save time, I'm going to equip the sword, and then I'm going to save my game. So that's another use of saving your game. If you're testing something out like a sword, for example, you can save with everything set up and ready to go so that when you hit play, you don't have to like go through the setup. It's really useful for quests. So we've got the sword. I'm going to try attack. And there you go. Now it's playing my heavy attacks. And they're looking pretty good. And the light attacks and the heavy attacks look the same. And the only thing that will be wrong is you won't be able to hit people, because basically you need to tell the animations when they should deal the damage, right? We don't want to deal the damage right at the start of the animation. We want to sort of deal it at a certain point in the animation. And this is really easy to set up. So we're going to go to those montages we used. We'll open them up. And basically, if you scrub through the montage, you can see for this animation, I'd want to cause the damage about here, right? So all I do is I go to that point, right click, add notify state, and then melee attack. That's all you have to do. And for now, it actually doesn't matter how long the melee attack is. It's the start where it will deal the damage. And so we're going to add the same for that second. So about there, I would say. There we go. Save. And now if we hit play, we jump into our save with our sword all set up. Bam! You can see we can actually deal damage to people now. The other thing I'm going to jump into is dodging. So dodging is quite an interesting one. In games like The Witcher, for example, if you're in melee combat, you can dodge. And if you run in any direction and press Q, it will try to dodge, but unfortunately you can see it gives you this message. It says narrative doesn't come with dodge animations. So if you buy a pack that has sword animations or dodge animations like the Sword Anim Set Pro, you can use those. And actually, if we search in here, where are we? You can see we've got dodge left, dodge right, dodge forward, and dodge backward Whatever dodge animations you use, you do have to do a similar step where you have to tell it what portion of the animation we should actually move your character during. To do that, you just right click, add notify state, motion warping, and then you just have to call it dodge warp. So if you just plug in dodge warp, that's all you have to do. And just make sure that the start and end frames sort of match the time in the animation when you're actually doing the dodge. And this will work for rolls like in The Witcher where your character does a roll to get out of the way. And then to actually make this work, simply just search for GA dodge, which is the dodge ability. And we're going to go into class defaults, and you can see it's just asking for the animations. So we're going to plug in our dodge forward, our dodge back, dodge right, and dodge left, and compile and save. And you can see that if I hit play and I start running, for example, right and press Q, you can see it actually does a dodge. I can do a dodge backwards, dodge left, and so on. And it actually uses some of our stamina up, which is one of the attributes that you can create items that affect. Stamina is more just there as an example. I think some of the abilities use it, but you can absolutely remove stamina if your game doesn't require it. If you ever want to change some of the animations, so for example these pistol animations, you don't want to use the Lyra ones that we use as a demo, you can simply open them up, go to the class defaults, and if you scroll down, you'll see here they all are, right? There's idle hipfire, idle ADS, idle crouch. Obviously there's a huge amount of animations that you have to swap out, but the option is there, right? If you need that level of complexity, you can swap these out. I'm going to show you something else in the quest editor. You might have been noticing earlier that there's a bunch of really useful tasks that come with narrative, and they're all great. But obviously, you know, your game's pretty specific. It's going to have its own custom tasks, right? And so I'm going to show you how to implement those. Now, by default, you want to put it inside of blueprints, make a folder called tasks, and put it in there. You need to put it in blueprints tasks by default. You can change that if you want, but I'd recommend just putting it in here. Now in this folder, we're going to make a special type of quest task. So let's just say that for whatever reason in your quest, you want to make a task where the player just has to wait 10 seconds. So you don't really have to do anything. You just have to wait. So in this tasks folder, let's make that task. I'm going to call it qt_wait. And this is a really simple task. So we can just go to the begin task. You can use the delay node to wait a certain amount of time. We're going to make this a variable. And we'll make it default to 5 seconds. And then when the delay is finished, you can just do complete task. And for tasks that have a certain quantity, like take out a certain amount of enemies or something like that, you can use add progress if you want. But in this case, where we just need to wait a certain amount of seconds, complete task makes a lot of sense. So we'll just compile and save. And then in the settings, you can give it some description here. So we'll say like custom tasks. Anyways, if we go back into our quest, I'll show you that in action now. So I'm going to hold Alt and disconnect this. And now you should see under custom tasks, our wait task has shown up. So now you can actually have a task where we have to wait 5 seconds. So if I do his quest here, you can see this will be a very, very dumb quest, but you get the point. Need any help? And you can see if we wait 5 seconds, you can see quest succeeded. So a very basic task. One more thing that I have to mention, because it is actually really cool, is if you go to get task description, tasks can automatically generate their own descriptions. This is actually really cool. So I'll just show you this. If we go format text here, we'll just say wait and then you want to do curly brackets x seconds, and then plug that duration in here. You're going to see how this works in a second. It's really cool. So we'll compile and save. If you go back into the quest editor here, you can see it says wait 5 seconds. And if I change the wait to say 3 seconds, look at that. It automatically updates that description. And so what this does is if we do the quest, watch this. You can see in the quest it says wait 3 seconds. I didn't even have to write wait 3 seconds. The quest task was smart enough to auto-generate the description based on what we gave it. But you can also override it. So if we want it to say wait 3 seconds with a bunch of exclamation marks, you can use the description override here so that it says whatever you want it to say. And there you go. So in our quest, I've disconnected this, and I'm going to show you how sequences work. So often in games, you know, a cinematic should play, and then it'll skip to the next part of the quest after the cinematic finishes. In Unreal Engine, the cinematics are referred to as sequences. And often in quests, you'll want to be able to do that. And there's a task called wait sequence finish. So what that does is it will actually kick off a sequence. It will start the sequence, and when it ends, that will complete the quest task. And you will use this all the time, especially if you have quite a cinematic sort of a game. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just hook that up like so. And I am going to go to add level sequence. And I'm just going to put it in a folder here, cinematic. And we'll just call it ls_tutorial sequence. You will need to make that cinematic folder if you don't have it, and then click save. So we're going to make an extremely simple cinematic. It's going to be very, very basic. So we're going to click on the camera here. I'm not going to go too into cinematics. There are good tutorials out there on making cinematics, but we're just going to make a really simple one. So we've got the camera selected. We're actually controlling the camera right now. You can see it says pilot. And I'm going to add a keyframe. And then I'm going to click the jump to end button, and then I'm going to sort of move the camera just a wee bit, and then I'll just add another keyframe. And you can see what that's going to do is it creates sort of an animation in the sequence. If I play, there you go. Don't worry about that character, by the way. I just had him placed there as a test. You don't need to have him there. Just add those keyframes like I showed you there. And then what we'll do is we'll go back into Jake's quest, and we will add the cinematic that we just made. Tutorial sequence. And there's also this delay that you can use as well. And that sort of lets NPCs run over to the right location. We'll get to that in a little bit, but just know that this is basically just how long to wait before it kicks off the sequence. So what that will do is when the quest starts, after 2 seconds, it'll play the cinematic. And then when the cinematic finishes, it'll complete the quest. Anyways, enough yapping. I'm going to close the sequencer because sometimes that can cause the odd issue in Unreal Engine. And then we're going to hit play and we'll actually try this out. I'm going to start the quest, and you should see that after 2 seconds, the cinematic will play. And you can see that it does. Obviously, this is not a very good cinematic. There's no characters in it talking or anything like that. But you get the point, right? The quest plays, or the cinematic plays, and then the quest is complete. You'll also notice that when we do the quest and the cinematic plays, there will be an option to skip the cinematic in the bottom corner, and we can skip the cinematic by pressing S. And that can be quite useful. And so that's obviously a really quite boring cinematic. What if you want a cinematic where it's got a bunch of NPCs in it and they're talking to each other and playing animations? And even more interestingly, what if you want it to blend seamlessly into the cinematic, just like that one that we saw in the demo map? Well, let me show you. So what if you want your cinematic to be a little bit more complex? You know, you want some NPCs to be in it, you want them to talk to each other, you want them to play animations and so on. How do you do that? Well, it's actually really simple. So what we're going to do is we're going to go to Narrative Pro Content, and we're going to use the cinematics from the demo level as sort of a template. I'd recommend using them as a template because it sort of saves you having to do a lot of annoying setup yourself. And so there's this one here, Geometry Wars _ weapon store. And if we open that one up, you can actually see it in action. It's got some audio on it, and it's actually got some cameras on it. If you click this here, you can see it sort of cuts between different cameras and so on. And you can see this has 2 NPCs in it as well. It's got Marco, it's got our player, and it's got the Seth NPC. Those are the NPCs from the demo level. And so what we're going to do here is I'm going to go to place actors. I'm going to drag in an NPC. And in the outliner, I'm going to call it Marco. If you go down to Marco here, you can right click and do assign selected. So make sure that you have Marco selected first. So select it and then right click, assign selected. And what that's going to do, you can see I need to stop looking at the cinematic. I need to go back into the normal camera. What that's going to do is you can see Marco will now be controlled by the cinematic. And if we go over to him, he's way over here. That's okay though. You can see he's actually doing stuff here. Let's play this. Watch this.
Boys, what can I do you for? We need weapons, and we need a lot of them, Marco. And what would they be for? Can't say, Marco.
So you can see my excellent cutting edge voice acting there. And what we're going to do is we'll do another NPC. And we're going to name him Seth and do the exact same thing, right? Make sure that Seth is selected. Right click. Add selected. And so this is the demo map conversation between Seth and Marco. Anyways, the reason you want to do it this way is now you can easily just change this to be the Jake character that we made. We're going to delete this pistol part from the bottom. We don't need these pistols. But the rest of it should be quite useful, actually. So what we'll do is we'll take Marco and we'll actually just rename him up here to Jake. And we'll right click and go to tags and change that Marco tag in here to Jake. And now this will be Jake in our cinematic, and narrative is going to auto-magically just make this work. It's going to be really cool. Now, if we had more NPCs and we wanted to put multiple people in a cinematic, we could rename Seth and so on, and we could duplicate Seth as well. But I'm not going to worry about that. I'm just going to put Jake in the cinematic, and we will remove Seth from here. And I'll actually delete the Seth character from the level. And the last thing is this character, this Jake character, he's really far from where Jake actually is in the level. So I'm going to just move him. Now the only thing we need to worry about is he actually has a keyframe. If I click on that keyframe, you can see it takes me to frame 0 in the sequence here. And you can type frame 0 in here if you want to go to frame 0. But all we have to do is we just have to select Jake, and to make him appear at a different spot, we're just going to move him way over here. There we go. So he sort of spawns over here. So we'll just make him show up. Let's just put him there in the animation, right? And then we need to click the transform key. So now he's keyed to this position in the cinematic. Now I'm going to delete the existing cameras because the cameras are like way over there as well. We're going to add our own camera to the shot. So we can just delete this cameras folder. We don't really need it. And we'll delete everything from the camera cuts as well. Just get rid of all those. And then we'll click create a new camera. And we're just going to aim it at our Seth character. So that looks alright. And we'll save. Alright, what we're going to do now that we've got the camera sort of aiming at Seth is we're going to go back into the quest and we're going to change the sequence to the weapon store 1. And I do apologize, guys. What you really should do as well is if you've already done it, it's not really the end of the world, but you should hit Control D to duplicate the weapon store and make a duplicate and change that one instead of changing the one from the demo level, because obviously that would break the demo level cinematic. But anyways, it's not really the end of the world. So we're going to try this out. Let's go ahead and click the eject button. And you can see that the Jake NPC is still in the world. We don't need him in the world, and we're going to delete him. And we're going to click yes. It doesn't matter that we're breaking a reference, because what narrative is going to do is it's going to automatically inject him into the cinematic. Because we added that Jake tag, narrative's going to be smart enough to just inject him in there. The other thing you need to remember to do is tell narrative that Jake is in this cinematic so that it can inject him into the cinematic. Because what it will do is it will look for Jake and it will add him using that tag that we added to the sequence. And so if we try this out, should see here, when the sequence starts, Jake should get injected into it.
Boys, what can I do you for?
And there you go, there's Jake, he's in the cinematic.
And we need a lot of them, Marco. And what would they be for?
You can see obviously the dialogue lines and the animations don't make a lot of sense.
Alright.
But there's sort of the general idea. And don't worry, we'll improve this a lot. We'll make this a lot nicer. But I'm just going to explain a few more things. So when you go to the settings here, there are different things you can do with that as well. If you disable camera cuts, that's a really interesting one. So if we play after we disable the camera cuts, I'll just show you what that does this time. So now when the cinematic plays, it's not going to use a cinematic camera. It's just going to keep our gameplay one.
We need weapons and we need a lot of them, Marco. And what would...
So now we're going to put this all together into one final product here. Okay, so we're going to go into the quest. We'll open up the cinematic. And you can see the cinematic looks terrible because when it starts, Jake snaps into the location where the cinematic starts. That's fine if you have a camera cut, because then you don't notice the jump. But if you want to keep the player's camera and have it be a little bit of a seamless cinematic, then you need to do one extra step. Go to the location here and find the location where Jake stands. So here's the location. We're going to click on that send to destination, and here's the trick. We're going to send him to his cinematic start location. And hopefully you can see where this is going. So if we compile and save now, let's make sure to save everything and try this out. Should hopefully see Jake run to the cinematic start location and we'll get sort of a seamless cinematic effect. So let's try this out.
Hello boys, what can I do you for?
There you go.
We need weapons and we need a lot of them, Marco. And what would they be for? Can't say, Marco, it's a secret mission, you know that. Alright, there you go then.
And just as an example, I'm just going to add one more NPC to the project here. So we've got our Jake NPC. We're going to add one more NPC. So we're going to duplicate this and make an NPC. We'll just call him Gary. So I've duplicated that. So I need to make sure to actually change some of the stuff in here. So we'll change that. We'll generate a new ID for him. I'll just leave the rest as it is for now. I'm just doing this for the purposes of the cinematic, so it doesn't have to be perfect. And if we open our cinematic back up, we need to put our NPC back in because I got rid of him. So call him Jake. Add selected. And let's add Gary now as well. The easiest way to add Gary is just going to be to duplicate Jake. Click on yes. This one we're going to rename to Gary. And we're going to change the tag to be Gary. And of course they're in the same spot. I don't know what they're doing here. But we're going to move Gary a little bit here. So we're going to move him over. So let's say we want Gary to sort of stand over here in the cinematic. Go down to where it says transform and make sure to add a keyframe so that we key him there.
Hello boys, what can I do you for?
And he's playing the exact same animation. There is actually another one. If I right click on Gary, I can change his animation from Marco to Seth.
Hello boys, what can I do you for? We need weapons and we need a lot of them, Marco. And what would they be for?
And there you go.
Can't say.
Okay, so before we delete these NPCs, what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on Gary because we want Gary to run to his start location as well, right? So what we're going to do is we're going to copy this value here, and then in the quest we can duplicate the send to destination, and as well as sending Jake to his destination, we're going to send Gary to his destination. So just paste that in. Don't know why it's not letting me do. There we go. Okay. So we're sending Jake and Gary to their respective sort of destinations, and now we can delete them from the level, just like we did last time, because we've finished sort of making our cinematic using these NPCs. We don't really need them in the level anymore, and so we can get rid of them. And we've also sent Gary to the right destination that he needs to be at, but we also need to go to that cinematic wait task and just add Gary in here as well. Again, we have to tell narrative, hey, Gary's part of the cinematic. You need to bind him into that cinematic for us. Cinematics don't automatically generate the descriptions too, so you might actually want to add a description. We'll say, listen to Gary and Jake talk. And then we're going to come to Narrative City here, and under the spawns, we're just going to duplicate Jake's spawn and just change that to Gary. You need to make sure to give the spawn a new ID. And we'll also just move the spawn over a little bit so he's not standing in the exact same space. Going to save and hit play. And now we should have Gary and Jake in the level. They do look the same. I probably should have given them a different appearance. But anyways. And now if we start Jake's quest, when they actually do their cinematic.
Hello boys, what can I do you for? We need weapons and we need a lot of them, Marco. And what would they be for? Can't say, Marco. It's a secret mission. You know that. Alright. There you go, then.
And there we go. Now in the demo level, we actually spawn a pistol in. And he puts a pistol on the table. But yeah, you can see that works quite nicely. Right. To tie it all together, we are going to seamlessly blend into the cinematic. Quite an advanced technique, but actually a lot easier than you might think. So we'll turn that disable camera cuts back off, and all you have to do is open up the cinematic, and Unreal Engine has quite a bit of functionality for this. So if you right click on camera cuts and check the can blend option, that should already be on if you've duplicated, there's a little key right here. You can pull this out and you can see it's creating a blend for us. This is a really cool feature, this. Let's make sure you get the right one. It's quite easy to move the red one. You actually want to move that little thing in the top corner there. And if you save that... So I'm going to hit play now, and we're going to see this all tied together. Check this out. Going to start the quest.
Hello,
and look
boys,
at that.
What can I do you for?
Seamlessly blends
I
in.
need a lot of them, Marco.
But what would they be for? Can't say, Marco. It's a secret mission. You know that. Alright. There you go, then. And you can see it blends right out according to how we set it up. I just love that feature. And although that took a while, because that was kind of our first ever cinematic, once you get into the hang of authoring these, you can really crank a lot of these out. So narrative works with really any type of character, but that includes obviously metahumans, and so I thought I'd better show you how to get a metahuman into the project and use it with Narrative Pro. It is really as easy as just going into the appearance asset and just selecting the metahuman meshes, but let's actually do it. So we're going to go to Quixel Bridge. I'm not going to show you how to download a metahuman. It's pretty straightforward. I've got one here and I am going to just click add and add it to my project. This is the Gavin metahuman. It's one of the template ones that comes with the metahuman under the presets. And once you add Gavin, you can see here you get this Gavin folder and it's got BP Gavin here. So if you open Gavin up, it is going to say that you need to sort of enable some project settings. You can see down here. I'm just going to click enable missing on both of these. Obviously, if you're not using a metahuman character, you won't need to sort of do these steps. And then I'm just going to restart. And because I'm using C++, which I'd recommend, we can just click the restart the project. Alright, and we've restarted. We're going to come back in. We're going to go to Gavin and open Gavin up. And this time it should open up without any errors. And so you can see if we go to the viewport, Gavin is all here. So I'm going to make Jake into a metahuman. So let's actually we'll give Jake his own appearance asset. So you're going to go to data asset, appearance, character appearance. We'll call this appearance underscore Jake. We'll open Jake up. We're going to give Jake his own appearance finally. There we go. And now to give Jake a metahuman appearance, we're going to open that appearance up that we made and we're going to open up Gavin. And we're going to start filling this out. Okay, so we're going to go into the face mesh. And you can do shift right click and then paste that in here. You can see all those materials will come across as well. We're going to go to the torso. We're going to do the legs. We're going to do the feet. And we're going to do the body. The helmet mesh is really for if you want to have hair that is a mesh, but these metahumans use this special thing called groom, so they don't have that, so we can just leave that empty. Let's try hitting play now, and we'll see if that has worked. You can see that if we come into the level, there we go, Jake is a metahuman. Very nice. And because he has a face mesh, he can now play facial animations as well. And that's pretty much hooked up to work already. In the dialogue for Jake, you just need to select a facial animation, which you can do by clicking on the line and selecting facial animation. So yeah. Now one thing you'll notice about Jake though is he doesn't have any of his grooms. So I'm just going to remove Jake's armor set from his loadout, just so that we can see all the clothes pieces working as well. Yeah, looks like he's working pretty well. The only thing is he doesn't have any grooms. He doesn't have any hair. If you want to do that, we do actually support grooms. Most games will not be using grooms. They're not really considered AAA ready as far as something you would actually use in a game. But we do support them because we know, some people are going to want to use them. If you use them really smart, you might be able to get away with using them in a game. You can probably use them in cinematics and things like that. To set them up, you want to do the exact same thing that we did before, just with the grooms instead of the meshes. So you can see here, just click on the eyebrows, copy the groom, eyebrow groom, copy the binding, eyebrow binding, copy the here. So you would just go through and do all of these. I'm not going to do them all. I would really recommend just using a mesh for here pieces because, like I said, the groom's going to be quite inefficient if you were really making it for a real game. Although for development purposes, it works pretty good. And there you go. You can see Jake actually has his groom assets applied to him. Very nice. And yeah, he'll work perfectly. All the cinematics and stuff, that'll all still
boys, what can
work.
I do you for? We need weapons and we need a lot of them, Marco.
One of the things that I said that I would cover later on is the skill trees and the perks that come with Narrative Pro. This is a little bit of a beta feature. It's still very powerful and I think you can do a lot with it, but it is something that I'd like to build out a little bit more. However, let's just add a new skill. So one of the things I said that I would touch on later on is the skill trees and the perks. And this is one of those things that I have just So one of the things that I said I would talk about later is the skill trees and the perks. And if you search for narrative player state and open that up, you'll see the skill tree component. And you can see there's a little bit of a description here. Essentially, it's similar to sort of a Skyrim-based system where you have sort of a number of different skills. You've got perks inside of those skills and you can buy them and sort of level them up. So let's go ahead and add a skill. You can see there are a few that actually come with the plugin, although a lot of them are sort of just example skills. But let me show you how to set up a new skill. So if you search for skill underscore, you can see there's a whole bunch of them already implemented. Let's go into the skill trees folder and we'll add a new one. I'm going to say this one will be athleticism. And we're going to right click, go to blueprint class, and if we look for tree skill, we can make a new skill. So skill athleticism. So skills have a bunch of perks inside them, and you can purchase the perks to sort of move through the skill and upgrade the skill. So we're going to open our athleticism skill up, and we will add a description. We'll say upgrade your movement and strength. And all skills have perks in them, and they have a root perk. This is sort of the first perk in the sort of perk tree, if you will. So to make a perk, we're going to go to blueprint class. We're going to search for tree perk. And there is one that allows you to easily modify a ability system attribute, and you can look in the melee folder for an example of one of those. But we're just going to use the tree perk here. So we'll say perk underscore athleticism underscore muscle mass. Now, perks have levels, right? So at level 1, maybe a perk gives you 5% more attack damage, but at level 2, it gives you 10%, and so on. Or some perks might be no level, right? There's just one level, right? So the perk might be your footsteps no longer make sound when you move. So that would just be a one-off buy, right? It's not something that has levels to it. So it's up to you how you want to define it. You can define the max levels that the perk has. You also can define where it displays itself in the graph, which we'll get into in a bit. But I'm just going to give it a name here. We'll say muscle mass. And this is going to be a bit of a silly perk just to sort of show you that you really can do anything with these perks. We'll just say increase the size of your character by 10%. And all you need to do, if we compile and save this, we're going to go into set perk level. And this is a function that gets called when the perk's level gets set. And we're going to add a call to the parent function. Now, if you buy the perk, your perk level will be 0. And it's -1 if you don't own the perk. So if we do get perk level, select. And what we want to do is we want to set your player's scale. We want to make your player a little bit bigger. To do this, we're going to get the owning component. We know that it's on the player state, so we're going to get owner. We're going to cast to player state. We can then get the pawn, and we can set the scale of our pawn. What am I doing wrong here? Set scale, set actor scale 3D, and plug that in like that. And then plug that in like that. What we're going to do is we're going to say if your perk is level 0, meaning you've purchased it, we're going to make your player 50% bigger. Compile and save. Go back into your player state and then add that skill. So click on the skill tree component, add skill, athleticism. And actually we need to open up our athleticism skill and add a perk. So the first perk that we've made for this one is muscle mass. And you also need to give it some display coordinates. I'd recommend making it sort of 50 across on the X here. You'll see that in a second. And to add any linked perks, you just add them like this. I'm not going to do that yet because we don't have any more perks. And we will try this out. So if I go into skills, you can see a new skill has appeared, athleticism. You can see it says muscle mass. If I click on it, increase the size of your character by 10%. Now I should have actually put 50%. But yeah, I don't have enough points to buy it. But what I'm going to do is I'm just going to do give skill points 5. And now we'll try buy it. And there you go. You can see that it made my character bigger. Now, what if you want a perk to actually have levels, right? More than one level. Well, in this case, the way we've set this up, it makes it really easy. So we're going to go to class defaults. We can change the max levels to say 3 this time. And now we can actually go kind of crazy with it. I'm going to kind of exaggerate these values just to show you this. And we're going to do get perk description as well. And I'm going to copy this here. So we're going to override get perk description. And we're going to actually just do a select. And then we will copy this. And we'll do the same thing that we did before, but now we're just doing it for the text. So I believe the values I did is 50%, 100%, and 150%. So this is going to look very ridiculous, but it's just to show you the proof of concept. So let's go ahead and hit play. And I need to give myself some more skill points. Give skill points 10. And let's try this out. So if I click on it now, you can see it says level 0 of 3. Increase the size by 50%. And there is one problem. I actually want to show what the next level is, not what your current level is. So to do that, we just need to add 1 to the level like that. And now that should work properly. If we hit play, give skill points, and now we can try this out. So in athleticism, increase the size by 50%. If I buy that, I'm bigger. And we'll buy the next level of it. Now I'm really big, and then finally, final level, and my character is massive. So of course, that's a pretty silly example, but you can really do anything you want because, as you can see, you can get a reference to the player. And so you can give them money, you can set attributes, you can do whatever you want. Just to show you how these linked perks work, in my skill athleticism, I'm not going to create any more perks because I've sort of shown you how that works. Instead, I'm just going to use some existing ones just to prove the concept here. So if we add some linked perks, we could add, for example, long arms and feather quiet, which are some existing ones. And we'll just move these across. So I'm going to say 100. 300, and for this one I'm going to say negative 100, 300, and this is how you add more perks to sort of build out a tree. By adding them to the linked perks, you can see that now we should have some linked perks here. If we go back into athleticism, you can see it shows up now. Now I haven't really positioned the X very well, so what I'm going to do, go back into my skill. Instead of doing 300, I'm going to do 400 on the X. If we compile and save, now that should actually display a bit nicer. And you can see that I've actually got some prerequisite perks. You can see muscle mass. If I buy it, it will unlock these next two perks, and now I can actually purchase these. I just want to touch on the perk video as well. If you open up that muscle mass perk that we added, obviously I don't have a video for it, but obviously, you know, there's a bunch that come with the plugin. So if we select the melee attack one, for example, you should see that when we go into the perks, athleticism, muscle mass, you can see it displays that video, and you can probably tell it's relatively easy to add your own videos. You'll have to create your own MP4 files like we did at the start, moving those MP4s over. And then if you browse to these videos, these are just file media sources, which you can create by going to media and adding a new file media source, and then just selecting the MP4 file. So it's quite a simple process. Now I'd highly recommend adding some art to really appreciate narrative. Obviously it does a lot, but if the game isn't visually nice, it doesn't really matter. So I've added this lookout tower. If you have any marketplace assets, feel free to add them in. So what I've done here is I've got this lookout tower pack, and I've just added it to my project. And inside of this lookout tower map, I've just dragged the settlements in, and I've just set them up in this new map as well. I put the thug camp down here on the beach. And you can see now you can really start to appreciate some of the fidelity. We've got Jake here, Gary here. Let's make my player a metahuman as well. If you search for appearance player, this is the player's default appearance. And I'm just going to copy the values over from Jake's appearance that I made. So we'll open that one up as well. And very easy, we just copy the head over, copy the torso over, the legs, shoes, body. I'm going to copy over the hair groom and the eyebrow groom. And if we save that and hit play, we should now be a metahuman. Very nice. So I haven't talked much about input so far. What if you want to change key bindings around and things like that? So let me explain how to do that. It is quite simple. So in the content browser, we're going to search for IMC, and there's this IMC default, and this is basically the default input mapping setup. So Narrative Pro uses enhanced input. This is another great system that Epic recommends you use. And if we open up the IMC default, this basically just defines what ability maps to what input. So you can see jump is mapped to the space bar, the face button bottom. You can see attack, left mouse button or right trigger. And so it's extremely easy to come in here and change those prompts. You'll also notice in the input folder there is a default abilities asset, and that defines what ability input maps to which mapping. So you can see attack calls the attack ability, alt attack calls the alt attack ability. We've got ability 1, 2, 3, 4. Jumping, crouching, and reloading are all abilities as well. And so in any ability that you create, so let's look at the reload ability, for example, that reloads your weapon. If I search for reload, you can see in the class defaults here, it has an input ID, reload. So whenever you make an ability, if you select the input here, that will call the ability. And the other thing that people probably want to know is how do you define which abilities the character gets by default? And if you look for the player state, it is in there, I do believe. So if we open the player state. Now the other thing you might want to define is what abilities the player gets by default. And you can see here, if we search for player character and open that up, in the class defaults, if you go down to narrative abilities, you can see you can define the character's default attributes. You can define startup effects, so these are granted to the player when they spawn in. We have this passive attribute regen. This is what regenerates your stamina over time. We also have your character's default abilities, and they're all in here. So by default, your character has melee, block, crouch, jump, dodge. We have toggle weapon holstered, that gets your weapon out and puts it away. There's also a death ability. You cannot activate that. That will automatically be activated for you. There is also the level exponent X and Y. That defines the jumps between levels, and you can also see here, this one here is the base XP per level. So you can tweak these a little bit. If you feel like your player's leveling up a bit too fast, you can sort of change those numbers and modify that. Another one worth noting is that at the moment your player's faction is actually stored in the player state. That really should be in the player definition, but if you ever do want to change the player's faction, it is in here. Now, lots of games are going to want to add to the UI, and I'm not going to go insanely into depth about this, but I will show you how to implement a new tab into the UI. It is actually a lot more simple than you might think. A lot of games have sort of a monsters or a beasts tab, and every time you kill a new monster, it will appear in that tab. And so we're going to just do something a little bit similar as an example. I'm just going to use that as my example here. So it's actually easier to do than you would think. Let's go to Blueprints. We're going to right click, and we're going to go Blueprint Class, and search for Activatable Widget, and you want to use Widget Blueprint Narrative Activatable Widget. I'm going to call it Widget Blueprint _ Beasts menu. And if I open it up, I'm not going to be implementing a full Beasts menu because there is quite a bit to that, but I'm just going to style the UI and show you how it is done. We're going to put some text on, so if you want to put text with Narrative Pro, you should always use the common text block that comes with Narrative Pro, and that will let you apply any stylings you want. So I'm going to go primary title, drag this out, and I'm just going to say Beast Menu. I'll hit Control D to duplicate that. I'm going to move this one down a little bit. I'll just say your beasts will appear here. So all you need to do to add a menu, it will compile and save that. If we come into the player info, so you'll need to search for player info and open that up. All you have to do is add it to the switcher content here. So we'll search for our beasts menu, drag it into the switcher content, and this will show you how it looks when you open it up. So that looks fine to me, just as an example. And all you need to do now is go to the graph, and under event construct, you just have to add the tabs before we start listening for input. Literally, you just copy and paste this and add the tab. So I'm going to say tab index 4. If you click on your beasts menu, you need to make it a variable and drag that in, plug it in like that. Under tab name ID, you want to say beasts. And if you hit play and jump into the game, you can see the beasts tab appears, and we can open that up. And obviously, in a real game, you'd want to add some buttons and some functionality, but that just shows you the general idea of how to implement it. And you can actually press A and D to cycle through your tabs, which is quite nice as well. So to get a good idea of how some of these menus are implemented, if you want to actually see how the functionality and the code works, you can click on any of these and then just edit them. And this is the quest journal, for example. So if you open the graph, you can see exactly how the quest journal works. So I'm not going to cover creating metahuman facial animation in this video, but there are plenty of tutorials. I'll make sure to link one in the description. But I'm going to show you how to get narrative to play the facial animations once you've made one. So if I go into Jake's dialogue here, I'm going to select an animation that I have created using Metahuman Animator. It's very easy to create animations like this. So I'm just going to update the subtitle, but basically to get narrative to play the facial animation, you literally just select it in here. Very, very straightforward. And also the sound asset in there as well. Let's try this out. I'm going to go ahead and talk to Jake.
Hello, sir. I have a very important quest for you. Do you accept?
Very nice. And of course we can select animations for our player as well, and it will work the exact same way. So it's pretty amazing how quickly you can get something that starts to look pretty AAA. And if you're noticing I don't have the minimap, I just need to generate a map using the same steps that I showed at the start of the video. So I'm going to leave it there for the quick start guide. Thank you for coming along and learning how to use Narrative Pro, and if you need more specific support or you have a question, the support Discord will be linked below. It's also worth noting that I didn't go too deeply into quests and dialogues and interaction. I sort of covered everything. However, I'm going to leave the links for the quests, dialogues, interaction, all of those quick start guides in the description below. So if you need to know more about, for example, interaction, there's a whole 1 hour video on that. If you need to know about quests and dialogues, there's a whole 3 hour video going really in depth into those topics as well. But of course, if you have any questions, the Discord is probably the best place to get advice. I plan on making some more videos on Narrative Pro in the future, going into more specific pieces of functionality. But that's going to be it for the quick start guide. So thanks for watching, and I'll see you later.